Uncover the 4 surprising vitamins to avoid over 60 and the 4 transformative ones to embrace daily. Joan Parker sat in the back row of the community center, her arms crossed defensively as the speaker flashed bold claims across the screen. "The world is changing," he claimed, "and so must you." The truth weighed heavy on her. She'd spent her life behind the counter of Parker's pharmacy, knowing every regular face who passed through those doors. But that world felt like a faded photo in her mind, especially now, with the loss of her husband still looming over her like a persistent cloud. She traded consultations and laughter for an empty house, her identity broken apart piece by piece. Health concerns nudged her into this seminar, but skepticism tinged her every thought. Vitamins, old remedies, how could the very thing she'd trusted for decades suddenly be labeled suspect? She recalled her mother's tales of garlic and honey, dewy mornings spent blending herbal teas. The traditional ways had never failed her. They built her life. The thought of abandoning these traditions felt like betrayal. Why should she follow the advice of someone whose name she didn't even know? Yet, she recognized a flicker of determination deep within her. Perhaps it was time to learn something new. As Joan fidgeted, her mind flashed through memories. The townsfolk reliant on her during flu season, the way they lit up at the sight of their prescriptions filled with care. Still, sitting there, she felt trapped in a chokehold of regret. What if her methods were stranding her in a past that didn't serve her anymore? Would it be so bad to let go? That question turned the air around her thick, her breath coming in shallow sips. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the speaker returned to the mic, images of vibrant vitamins danced across the screen, promising energy and zest. But they also warned of hidden dangers, things she had embraced mindlessly. An ache gripped her. Could it be true? She'd been so steadfast, dismissing any newfangled health advice as much ado about nothing. Yet, a whisper of fear crept in as she considered the possibility, rejecting that knowledge might inadvertently lead her down a darker path. Just then, a familiar voice broke through her frantic thoughts. It was Liz, her neighbor from 2 doors down. "Joan, did you hear about Ed?" A flood of images washed over Joan, the smiles, the dinners, the late-night card games with her husband long gone. The mention of Ed's hidden heart condition sent Joan's mind spiraling into chaos. Had Jim known this? The weight of secrets pressed on her chest. How many hidden truths lay beneath the surface of their life together? As she stared into Liz's concerned eyes, something shifted within her. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, anger at Jim for keeping her in the dark, anger at herself for having been blind. Could her world really be built on such shaky ground? With every new revelation, the foundation of her old life seemed to crack further. Would she dare dig deeper? Joan's heart raced, caught between wanting to confront the truth and the fear of shattering the delicate memories of their life together. Her tightly held beliefs about family and loyalty were suddenly tangled with betrayal, leaving her feeling lost amid a flood of uncertainty. With each second ticking by, Joan felt the unfolding mystery tugging at her more desperately. What path lay before her as she braced for the answers? Looking around, she realized this was only the beginning, and the shadows of her past were no longer something she could ignore. Joan's thoughts spiraled, the discomfort of realization gnawing at her like an insatiable animal. As she listened to Liz detailing Ed's medical struggles, her fingers tightened around the cold metal of her chair. The world outside the pharmacy had evolved, and she had barely moved. The revelation about Ed felt like a personal blow, shattering her long-held ideals that knowledge equated safety. What if she, too, was blind to the realities buried beneath familiar comforts? The seminar continued in the background, a dull murmur of optimistic claims about vibrant energy and vitality, but Joan was caught in a tempest of reflection. What lay ahead for her? The strong, unwavering figure she had always envisioned herself to be felt absurdly fragile now. She was a caretaker, a protector, a role her husband had shared, but now she felt naked and exposed without him. Images of her husband filled her mind, his laughter echoed in the corners of her memory, a stark juxtaposition to the weight of the secrets she'd unknowingly carried. She thought of the inventory she'd taken the night of his funeral, the quiet moments spent sifting through shared memories, and all the things left unspoken. The very pillars of her existence seemed to be crumbling away. Was her trust misplaced? A flicker of anger surged within her, mixing with fear and regret. Yet, that emotion felt different than before. This anger burned with potential. She had been complacent, sidelining her own growth. In the past, she would have questioned none of this, retreating into the embrace of nostalgia and routine, but now she felt an undeniable urge crackle in the air around her. Perhaps confronting her fears was the only way forward. Rising from her seat, Joan approached the podium where the speaker, still unaware of her internal revolution, swept through more statistics and transformative journeys. She struggled to focus on his words, asking herself what transformation looked like for her. Did it require dismantling everything she thought she knew, or could she integrate new views alongside her past wisdom? When the seminar reached its first break, she glanced around the room, searching for safety in familiar faces. Some appeared enthralled by the speaker, others absorbed in conversations about health trends. Still, she felt isolated in her contemplation. She had always prided herself on being the go-to source of knowledge, the woman who could be counted on for the right remedy or the best advice. Yet now, doubt flourished in the cracks of her confidence. "Joan, are you okay?" Liz's questioning tone broke through her reverie. Concern flooded the other woman's eyes, punctuating the thick silence. I'm beginning to realize there's so much I don't know anymore," she admitted, every syllable barbed with vulnerability. Liz placed a reassuring hand on Joan's arm. "You're not alone in this. We're all learning." For the first time, Joan considered the idea of collaboration rather than control, an invitation to share her burdens with those who understood, not just the townsfolk, but with others who also faced their own transitions. It felt oddly empowering to step away from the spotlight and find solace in collective learning instead. As the next session commenced, she resolved to lean into the discomfort, to confront her ignorance instead of avoiding it. The bitter taste of potential betrayal made her heart race, but a new source of determination bubbled within. What hidden truths awaited her, not only in the realm of health, but also about herself? Joan couldn't ignore the gravitational pull towards understanding, and she felt herself opening up to the idea of change. The speaker ended the session with a challenge. How will you embrace change, so you don't just survive, but thrive? Joan's pulse quickened. Perhaps survival was no longer her goal, thriving was the new frontier. As she stepped outside, rather than stumbling into the shadow of her past, she sensed the dawn of a new journey. It started with a question that ignited every cell in her body. What if everything she had known was just the tip of the iceberg? The icy grip of fear throbbed with the warmth of possibilities. Would she take the plunge, or allow herself to stay anchored in the safety of her old beliefs? The answer was out there, waiting, tantalizingly close. Joan stepped outside, the cool air brushing against her skin like a wake-up call. For the first time, she embraced the uncertainty surrounding her. The chatter of the seminar faded into the background, replaced by the thumping rhythm of her heart, a steady drumbeat of anticipation for what came next. She took a deep breath, trying to ground herself in the present moment to relish the weight of her own thoughts instead of being a passive observer. The world unfolded before her, and with it, a landscape of choices. What would thriving look like for her? The questions felt heavy yet exhilarating, the answers eluding her just when she needed clarity. Instead of fleeing this daunting crossroads, she planned to explore it with a determined spirit. She recalled the speaker's challenge. Echoing in her mind, change was not merely about survival. It was about facing the unknown and transforming it into something meaningful. The seminar had become a catalyst, pushing her beyond her comfort zone. Still uncertain of her next steps, she felt a strange exhilaration coursing through her, daring her to venture into unfamiliar territory. Joan knew she had to move beyond passive insights. Knowledge had served her well as a pharmacist, but it was clear that wisdom today required active engagement. Facing her fears commanded more than intellect. It needed emotional resilience and vulnerability. She envisioned a vibrant future awaiting her, one replete with essential truths about herself, truths she had yet to define. This marked the beginning of her deliberate journey. Walking briskly to her car, Joan's mind began to swirl with practical ideas. She wanted to reconnect with her community by offering health seminars for locals, not merely dispensing information, but inviting others to share their experiences. She'd create a space where knowledge transformed into genuine connection. This was her chance to be vulnerable, to build a network, a patchwork of shared stories and mutual learning. At home, she delved eagerly into the research notes scattered across her kitchen table, sifting through outdated articles and neglected books. Information that once seemed sacrosanct now felt like chains binding her to the past. She knew that for every outdated belief she uncovered, she could replace it with a vibrant new insight. Fingers flipping rapidly through pages, she absorbed facts about essential nutrients and the impact of lifestyle choices, each new discovery igniting a fire inside her. The glaring absence of knowledge surrounded her like fog. Hidden truths awaited revelation. Perhaps Ed's struggles were not just personal tragedies, but also a reflection of collective ignorance about health. Days turned into restless nights, filled with questions and a voracious thirst for understanding. Each morning, the sun would rise, casting light into the dark corners of her ignorance. She found herself venturing into the realms of physical fitness, nutrition, and emotional well-being, the pillars necessary for a thriving life. As the weeks passed, Joan scheduled the first community seminar, a risk-laden decision pulsing with both dread and vigor. Her first instinct was to pull back, but something in her shifted. The very act of planning this event immersed her deeper into her new approach. This was about unveiling her vulnerabilities and opening up discussions, not about being the expert, but rather a seeker among many. The night before her seminar, the anticipation swelled, stoking her nerves. She faced a daunting question. Would people come? Would they trust her, the once unquestioned authority, now stripped and raw in her quest for knowledge? Joan stood in front of her bathroom mirror, examining her reflection. This was no longer just about teaching others. It was a matter of forging her identity anew, unfurling layers of herself buried beneath societal expectations. Tomorrow would determine the strength of her resolve. Her mind spiraled with possibilities, but one thought anchored her. The seminar was a chance not only to provide information, but also to learn from those willing to share their journeys. Perhaps the courage to face change was the greatest gift she could offer herself and the community. As sleep finally overtook her, Joan found herself smiling through the uncertainty. Her dreams mingled with a whispering question that surged ahead. What growth awaited her in the exchange of stories? Tomorrow loomed, and with it arose both an opportunity and a challenge. Faster than she could imagine what would happen when she confronted her deepest fear of inadequacy head-on. Joan awoke with the dawn, a sliver of sunlight pulling her from the embrace of dreams filled with both anticipation and dread. The sun streamed through the window, casting tentative rays onto her face. Today was the day. Every instinct told her to retreat back to her comfortable routines, but so much more pulsed in her veins. She had worked too hard, dug too deep, to let fear dictate her actions now. The hours leading up to the seminar were a kaleidoscope of emotions. She laid out her presentation materials, making sure everything was in order. Her hands trembled slightly as she shuffled through notes, her mind a battleground between self-doubt and resolve. What if no one came? What if they did, and she stumbled over her words? The weight of self-imposed expectations pressed heavily on her shoulders. But another thought flickered like a candle in the dark. Each moment spent preparing was an affirmation of her commitment to growth. She wasn't just facilitating. She was initiating a conversation. The realization filled her with a warmth that battled the anxiety swirling in her stomach. Joan stood, took a deep breath, and looked around her living room, trying to find the perspective she had cultivated over the past weeks. This space was no longer just a refuge of solitude, but a workshop for change. She reminded herself that vulnerability was strength. Each moment she felt afraid, she grabbed onto that feeling and transformed it into fuel rather than a hindrance. With her heart pounding in rhythm with her preparations, she began rehearsing her opening line in front of the mirror. Welcome, everyone, to this brand new journey. Joan practiced the phrase repeatedly until it wore down her nerves into something manageable. As she drove to the community center, the familiar route felt different. This time, every street sign became a staunch reminder of her decision, a step away from the pharmacy counter and into the realm of authentic self-discovery. Her thoughts wandered to Ed and his struggle. Truly, wasn't this journey about empowering him and others to change their narratives? When Joan arrived, the empty seats echoed her fears back at her, yet the large banner she unfolded brought a glimmer of hope. She meticulously set it up with shaking hands, processing the reality of what lay ahead. This was her moment not only to teach, but to grow alongside others. Gradually, attendees trickled in, each face a mirror reflecting both apprehension and curiosity. As they settled into their seats, Joan felt her chest tighten with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She suddenly realized that everyone seated before her shared something significant. They were all there seeking transformations, a shared quest that melded their individual paths. When she finally began, her voice trembled, but as she progressed through her material, the nerves slowly morphed into something else. Passion. The more she spoke about health, about confronting ignorance, the more she could see light igniting in people's eyes, a spark of recognition or realization. The room became a dance of ideas, each question they posed drawing her further into this newfound role. But then, as she navigated through slides on the importance of certain vitamins, Joan opened the floor for personal stories. What transpired next was electrifying. Individuals spoke of their triumphs and failures, bringing raw authenticity to the discussion. Listening to their stories sharpened her understanding of the community's health needs, shattering her earlier notions of authority. This was no longer about her imparting knowledge, but about weaving a tapestry of collective insight. Each shared experience revealed hidden truths within her. Joan realized pieces of herself she had buried were rising to the surface. The quiet pharmacist was no more. She emerged as a catalyst for change in her own right, thriving as she engaged in real exchanges. Finally, one attendee posed an unexpected question that struck her like lightning. What has been your biggest fear in this journey? For a moment, Joan hesitated. The truth loomed large, almost too daunting to utter aloud. But she knew she must confront it, her fear of inadequacy, the same specter that had haunted her a day ago. Standing in this circle of vulnerability demanded it. I fear that I won't provide enough, that I won't be taken seriously. Her voice wavered as her eyes scanned the room, seeing empathy mirrored back. But today, I choose to embrace that fear because it's part of this journey. The silence that followed was thick and profound. In that moment, with the eyes of her community upon her, something transformed. She understood the root of her fear was not inadequacy, but the fear never to be enough for herself or for others. As the seminar drew to a close, Joan's heart brimming with unexpected warmth, she marveled at the newfound relationships sprouting around her. The stories exchanged, the laughter shared. This was just the beginning. But as she left the room, buzzing from an exhilarating yet draining experience, she felt a pulse of anxiety return. How far had she truly come? Was this seminar a fleeting surge of energy or the launching point for deeper, more significant personal development? A question reverberated in her mind. Would she be able to sustain this journey of growth? And as she stepped into the parking lot, the grip of doubt settled once more. This was a dance of courage and vulnerability, and now it felt more complicated than ever. As she entered her car, Joan exhaled deeply, her thoughts swirling with possibilities. The path to resilience lay ahead, but what would be the next true test of her newfound courage? Joan's fingers gripped the steering wheel as she drove home, her mind still racing with the energy of the seminar. Each stoplight felt like an eternity, forcing her to confront the ebb and flow of her emotions. It was exhilarating to feel the weight of shared stories pressing against her chest, but the anxiety that flickered beneath this excitement refused to dissipate. What would her next steps be? The seminar had lit a fire within her, an ember of potential forged from vulnerability and connection. Yet, a gnawing sensation whispered of uncertainty. How could she build on this momentum? The image of the attendees' faces, illuminated by newfound hope, flashed before her. Their stories had ignited a spark within her, urging her to explore deeper. But what if she couldn't sustain this connection? What if this turned out to be an isolated victory, destined to fade away like fleeting applause? As she entered her home, she decided self-reflection was critical. She sank onto the familiar couch, its fabric soft against her heated skin, and closed her eyes. It wasn't just about teaching anymore, it was about authenticity. Each shared experience during the seminar had unveiled aspects of herself she had overlooked. How, then, could she continue to evolve? Determined, she retrieved her notebook, the pages filled with doodles and notes from her training and experiences. She began writing, each stroke of her pen pushing back the pressure of self-doubt. She scribbled ideas for future discussions, incorporating the stories shared by those attendees. The vitamins they discussed had served as a metaphor. They weren't simply nutrients, but symbols of growth and nourishment. What else could she expand upon to assist others in nourishing their own lives? More pivotal than that realization was a question that surfaced. What if she redefined her role? If she embraced the idea of being a guide rather than an authority, she could create a space for dialogue rather than a lecture. The notion thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. The next few days became a careful balance between introspection and action. Joan immersed herself in research, poring over studies related to health and nutrition, while also exploring the emotional aspects of personal development. She wanted to not only inform, but empower. This endeavor would necessitate bravery. She would have to step out of the shadows of perfectionism. Something about her renewed focus began to reshape her outlook. She no longer viewed vulnerability as a weakness, but as a powerful tool. This comprehensive understanding was inviting yet daunting. Each step into the unknown flourished with potential pitfalls. If she wanted to reach others effectively, she had to confront her own unvarnished truths. Singer-songwriter Leonard Cohen's lyrics echoed in her mind. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Each misstep she had encountered over her career, each layer of insecurity, and perhaps even her attempts to overcompensate had brought her to this moment of clarity. A week later, she scheduled a follow-up discussion, a deep dive into the emotional terrain of health challenges. This would be more than just sharing information. It had the potential to transform lives, to cultivate resilience. The realization excited her and filled her with dread in equal measure. What if they challenged her ideas, caught her off guard, or questioned her authority? That familiar whisper returned, warning her of inadequacy. This was another opportunity to step away from the confines of her fears. Perhaps the very act of confronting criticism would help her grow stronger in understanding and connection. Facing the very real possibility of being vulnerable again evoked an anxiety she thought she had overcome. Yet this time, it was suffused with a newfound clarity. She could be both teacher and student. In the quiet of her notebook, she inscribed a mantra: growth requires courage. As she closed the journal for the night, the question lingered: could she truly live the change she sought to inspire? The coming meeting loomed large on the horizon, an intersection in her journey toward authenticity. Could this emerging role as a guide lead her not only to help others, but to discover a deeper truth about herself? Joan leaned back, frustration and hope winding together like a double helix. The moment of truth was approaching, and she understood that in the convergence of her past lessons and future endeavors lay the potential for something transformative. But was she willing to bare her soul before others again? Would she have the courage to embrace this new identity fully, forging connections that solidified her own place in a new narrative? The day of the follow-up discussion arrived with a deceptively calm morning. Sunlight streamed through her kitchen window, illuminating the scattered remnants of a hurried breakfast. Joan paced around her small apartment, her thoughts racing faster than her steps. This meeting was pivotal, an opportunity to peel back the facade she had worn for far too long. She had to commit to her newfound identity, but doubts clawed at her, each one echoing louder than the last. With trembling hands, she pulled out her notes. They were filled with insights distilled from her research and personal reflections. Yet, as she skimmed through her meticulously crafted outline, a creeping anxiety clouded her mind. What if it wasn't enough? The notion of sharing her vulnerabilities, her ideas, made her stomach turn. Arriving at the venue, she felt the electric hum in the air. Other participants began arriving, smiles plastered on faces, but Joan couldn't shake her internal tumult. Deep breaths were her only allies as she reminded herself of her mantra. Growth requires courage. She had to trust that this was not simply a lecture. It would be an engaging, two-way conversation, and conversations often led to unexpected revelations. As the attendees settled, she began the session, her voice shaky but firm. Welcome everyone. Today isn't just about health. It's about the emotions tied to our choices. We're more than just our diets. We are our stories. The words flowed more freely than expected as she encouraged each person to share their perspective, weaving their narratives into the fabric of health and nutrition. As participants spoke, Joan watched the way their vulnerabilities emerged. It was like watching a dance, fear giving way to connection, individual stories intertwining into a tapestry of human experience. Their laughter and sighs resonated with her, grounding her swirling thoughts back to the present. She challenged them with the idea that vulnerability could be their greatest strength. Let us talk about the vitamins we need. We've all heard about the usual suspects, vitamin D and C. But what if I told you that embracing complexity, vitamin B12, for instance, can give us the energy to engage fully with our lives? The discussion transformed from a simple presentation to a lively exchange of ideas. Questions flowed naturally, allowing Joan to pivot gracefully whenever uncertainty flickered in her mind. However, halfway through the session, an unexpected challenge arose. A particularly assertive participant challenged her assertions on emotional health being tied to nutrition. His voice raised. He questioned her authority and the veracity of her claims. Joan felt the air tense, time warping as a rush of heat surged through her. The familiar shadow of self-doubt threatened to engulf her, but she steadied herself. "Thank you for your honesty," she replied, heart pounding. "I invite challenges, as they create an opportunity for deeper conversation. It shows that this topic resonates. What do you believe is missing?" The room shifted. She had turned the confrontation into an invitation. By addressing his concerns openly, she felt a shift in the energy. The tension had transformed into an opportunity for growth for both her and the group. As the discussion continued, Joan embraced the complex tapestry of emotions surrounding their shared experience. She noticed a significant shift within herself. She no longer felt like a lone voice but a guide, fostering an honest discourse. The fear that had initially gripped her began to diminish, replaced by a burgeoning sense of confidence and authenticity. She emerged stronger, buoyed by the exchanges, and the weight of her self-doubt began to lift. As the session ended, attendees expressed gratitude for the discussions. The applause that followed wasn't mere validation. It symbolized a bridge built on mutual understanding and shared experiences. Yet, as Joan drove home that night, shadows of uncertainty lingered. Had she truly connected with her audience, or was this a fleeting victory? Amid the rush of emotions, burning questions ignited once more. Could she harness this momentum for broader discussions, or was the fear of inadequacy still lurking in her shadows? Determined to explore the depths of her potential, she grasped her notebook once again. But the next topic loomed larger than before. How could she cultivate and maintain this connection moving forward? And would she once again confront criticism with the same grace she had just exhibited? The road ahead shimmered with promise, but deep down, she sensed another challenge awaited, the ultimate test of her evolving identity. What if she found her voice, only to face a significant setback? Joan awoke the next morning feeling the lingering energy of yesterday's discussion. The applause still rang in her ears, mingling with the sense of accomplishment she had discovered. Yet along with that glow was an unsettling realization. The breakthrough she experienced needed to become a regular habit, a state of being rather than a momentary achievement. The sunlight slanted through her window, illuminating her kitchen table, which was now a chaotic mix of notes, books, and her laptop. There was work to be done. She understood that the session had activated something in her, an obligation to convert her insights into actionable knowledge for others. But what did that look like? Sipping her coffee, Joan flipped to a fresh page in her notebook. The title scribbled at the top, Future Discussions, stared back at her like an awaiting challenge. If she wanted to expand upon the previous session, her goals had to evolve from merely sharing knowledge to creating a deeper engagement. She considered how she could address complex themes while eliciting meaningful participation from her audience. What if she structured her upcoming presentations not just around health, but around personal stories of transformation. She paused, pondering how integrating real-life examples might facilitate better connections. Joan envisioned opening each session with a vulnerability of her own, sharing her journey with nutritious eating and emotional health, flaws and failures paired with successes and learnings. It was frightening, exposing herself, but she recognized the power of authenticity. Just then, a message alert interrupted her thoughts. It was a response from a participant named Marcus, who had rigorously challenged her the day before. "I appreciated your approach yesterday," he wrote, "but I have a few critical resources that contradict some of your points. When can we discuss?" Joan felt a pang of anxiety. Another chance to navigate potential conflict, but could this be her moment for deeper understanding? Confrontation, she realized, was no longer an enemy. It was a doorway to refine her ideas and enhance her resilience. She quickly typed back, suggesting a coffee meeting. This wasn't merely an act of reconciliation. It was an opportunity for growth, a chance to reinforce her position while remaining open to learning. Joan sensed that curiosity was the thread that knitted her discussions together. She had to live it, breathe it, and allow it to guide her through the complexities of holding her ground, even when faced with opposition. Over the next hours, she meticulously organized her thoughts and resources, creating an outline that could seamlessly weave her personal experiences into the fabric of nutritional wisdom. As Joan prepared the speech, she realized that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it would serve as a catalyst for greater understanding, inviting others to share their narratives and emphasizing the importance of community within her discussions. Later that week, she met with Marcus in a quaint cafe, where the scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the warm crunch of baked goods. The moment he walked in, she felt her anxiety spark again, but she masked it with a welcoming smile, extending her hand. "Thank you for reaching out," she began, her voice steady. "I'd really like to understand where our views differ." Their conversation unfolded rhythmically, with Joan actively listening to Marcus's perspective while carefully articulating her own. As the dialogue deepened, Joan discovered new insights about her topic that she hadn't previously considered. Each time he presented evidence, she questioned herself, challenging her preconceptions. It was invigorating. By the time they parted ways, Joan left feeling enriched. Her initial trepidation dissipated. She recognized that holding on to strict beliefs only stifled her growth. Sharing her vulnerabilities inspired others to do the same. She had perhaps opened a new chapter not just for herself, but for everyone participating in her journey. Though a sense of accomplishment filled her, another layer to her personal development loomed above. The upcoming public presentation, based on their conversation, was now a hurdle. Would she be able to take the lessons learned from her exchange with Marcus and skillfully weave them into her next discussion? It was one thing to foster discussions in a casual setting, but entirely different to incorporate those insights before a larger audience. Joan steadied her resolve, sensing that each step toward expansion was fraught with uncertainty. The upcoming session would have to integrate not only her journey, but also the recalibrated views she had gleaned from Marcus. Could she transform this moment of vulnerability into a profound impact, reconceptualizing opposition as an avenue to authentic dialogue and growth? As she sat in her living room, drafting her next presentation, a disconcerting thought flickered. What if this transformation didn't resonate with her audience? What if she stood before them only to discover the shadows of her insecurities creeping back in? Now, the time had arrived to confront the next challenge, positioning herself not only as a facilitator, but as a beacon for others seeking connection through shared experiences. Would she seize the moment, or would she let self-doubt cast another veil over her burgeoning identity? Joan stared at the blank presentation slides on her laptop, her fingers hovering indecisively over the keyboard. The title flashed menacingly at her, offering no reassurance. Uncover the 4 surprising vitamins to avoid over 60 and the 4 transformative ones to embrace daily. It felt ambitious, almost ludicrous, yet it was also an invitation to explore and connect on deeper levels than she had ever ventured. The coffee from their previous meetings still lingered in her system, its warmth invigorating yet trembling with doubt. Joan's mind spiraled. What if the audience questioned her competence? What if her newfound voice fell silent beneath the weight of scrutiny? Each fear seemed to forge a fragile barrier between her and the authenticity she aspired to share. Visualizing the packed room, Joan understood that the presentation wasn't merely about facts and figures, it was about transforming knowledge into a narrative that invited others to reflect upon their own lives. She recalled Marcus's critiques, the way he challenged her to think outside her comfortable parameters. Perhaps those vitamins could morph into metaphors for the life changes she craved to elucidate, crafting a tapestry of shared understanding. Taking a deep breath, she opened a new document titled Personal Narrative. Her heart raced as she reflected back on her journey, the struggles with self-acceptance mirrored in her nutritional health, and the encouragement she now yearned to extend to her audience. Could she highlight her dedication to breaking down complex dietary choices while revealing her personal challenges in navigating those waters? As she began to type her story, the vulnerability buried within her emerged. Memories of late-night binges on sugary snacks, the guilt that trailed her like a shadow, and moments of sheer joy when she chose a nourishing meal over something fleeting washed over her. Her hands moved faster as the words flowed, revealing a realization transformation required patience, and it was the battle she fought that rendered her wiser. Yet just as quickly, the shadows returned. Her insecurities formed a chorus too familiar, a reminder that she wasn't a nutritionist by profession, but rather a passionate advocate with a personal stake in the conversations she wanted to lead. The contrast struck her. Should she present her findings through a lens of expertise or through the lens of experience? With resolve tightening her shoulders, she chose the latter. Expertise can be constructed, but authenticity is a birthright. She resolved to share her transformative findings while embedding her past struggles within their relevance. This blend would amplify her mission, bringing nutrition back into the realm of human experience rather than distant statistics. The day of the presentation arrived far too quickly, leaving her heart racing with every ticking minute. As she entered the auditorium, the murmurs of the audience blended into a cacophony of insecurities. She surveyed the room, caught in a haze of unfamiliar faces. Yet, with each step toward the microphone, Joan also felt Marcus's spirit guiding her, urging her to share the heart of her journey. "Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today," she began, her voice trembling slightly. As she shared her personal narrative intertwined with the vitamins' implications, she noticed nods of recognition around the room. With every story and relation forged through vulnerability, the anxiety tethering her lessened. Just as Joan started feeling her rhythm, she noticed Marcus seated at the back, a supportive grin on his face. He had taken a leap of faith in her, and she was determined not to let the opportunity falter. But right on the edge of a moment she had so meticulously crafted, a troubling thought pierced through. Would she be able to hold their interest? Would they question not just her knowledge, but her very authority to speak on these subjects? The moment shifted, the ultimate challenge crystallizing before her. The essence of doubt and fear now faced her unapologetically. Joan drew a deep breath, appreciating that this moment reflected her journey's crux, a transformational vulnerability rather than a fearful weakness. The audience's engagement hung in the balance. Would she be able to transform their perceptions and create a dialogue fueled by her genuine experiences? As she launched into her next point and the questions began to formulate in her mind, she felt the surge of possibility. Would her vulnerabilities invite questions, not just about the vitamins, but the very nature of growth itself? Now the weight of her intention pressed upon her shoulders. She approached her next slide, a testimony of her journey toward holistic health, a cliff edge of potential revelations. Would clarity prevail, or would she find herself tumbling into the abyss of her initial doubts? Joan's heart pounded in time with the mounting tension that enveloped the auditorium. She was perched at the precipice of something significant, a moment where her words held the potential to inspire transformation not only in herself, but in those listening. Yet, within her, the creeping shadows of doubt threatened to drown out the crescendo of purpose she had cultivated. As she moved to the next slide, the vibrant graphics of vitamins danced before her, a stark contrast to the tumult swirling in her thoughts. "These represent not just pills or nutrients," she asserted, the steadiness in her voice emerging in waves of growing conviction. "They are symbols of choices we make daily about our health and our lives." Joan glanced at Marcus again. He was nodding along, visibly engaged. His presence ignited her fervor, pushing the hushed voices of inadequacy into the background. She began to connect the dots between the vitamins and her own journey. The narrative she wove now included moments of triumphs, her personal strife mirrored in the choices she made, and that inner battle to seek nourishment for both body and spirit. Just like avoiding excess sugars, she continued, the words flowing with more ease, I had to confront my own toxic patterns, be it in diet or in self-perception. With each revelation, the audience drew closer, leaning forward, their interest piqued. She could see the flickering recognition on their faces, a silent understanding that rippled through the crowd. For the first time in ages, Joan began to feel the joy of sharing as the initial anxiety receded. Yet, with every laugh and nod of agreement, a deeper question arose. What if this was just the beginning? What if her transparency opened the door to even more profound conversations about vulnerability, self-worth, and the courage it takes to change? The ease she felt began to mingle with the excitement of possibility. She could do more than just inform. She could influence. Each nod from the audience fueled her ambition, igniting a desire to delve deeper, to challenge them not only to embrace her insights, but also to confront their fears. Transformation is never linear. There are bumps, setbacks, and even moments of relapse, she said, her tone growing resolute. But each of these moments forms the fabric of what we can achieve. As we age, it's not just the vitamins we choose, it's the mindset with which we approach change. A hush descended as she laid out her own setbacks, her vulnerable choices mirrored in the experiences shared across the auditorium. This was not just her fight. It felt like their shared journey, each story intertwined. Still, the echo of self-doubt threatened to resurface. Was she truly making an impact? Would her audience reflect on their own lives, or merely categorize her as another voice in a sea of advice? Folding her hands behind the podium, she drew on those fears, transforming them into fuel. Imagine if we reframed how we discuss health and the aging process not as an endpoint, but as the beginning of a more profound self-acceptance, she proposed, her voice rising. A place where each transformed habit reflects our deeper understanding of our needs. As she spoke those words, it was as if the air itself shifted. Joan embraced the very essence of what made her speak. It wasn't about being an expert, but about crafting a community around shared experiences. The moment crystallized into clarity. Yet, just as the audience began to resonate with her message, she felt a sudden tension in the room, a query lingering unvoiced. Had she dug too deep? Had she laid herself bare enough to inspire? Or had the threshold of vulnerability she sought to break down merely revealed frailties that might push them away? She pressed on, maintaining a facade of strength. Empowerment is found in facing our truths, not shying away from them. Today, I challenge each of you to seek not just the vitamins, but the personal courage to reflect on your own journey. In that critical moment, a hand shot up from the back, and the audience fell into an anticipatory silence. The atmosphere crackled with energy, a compelling question that threatened to pivot the entire conversation into unprecedented territory. Joan braced herself, knowing that addressing this inquiry could either solidify her newfound voice or expose her fears anew. Does embracing our struggles mean we have to completely overhaul our lives? The voice called. Her mind raced, heart thumped, but she felt an unexpected surge of readiness coursing through her veins. Joan recognized this as the moment to confront the challenge head-on, to provide the guiding wisdom she had so earnestly sought for herself. Would she gamble on her growing confidence, or retreat into the safety of the familiar? With the weight of her journey resting heavily on her shoulders, she prepared to respond. This was her moment to embody the transformation she encouraged others to pursue. Would she rise to meet it, or would she falter in the spotlight? Joan's heart raced as she stood before the audience, that singular question hanging in the air, heavy yet electrifying. She inhaled deeply, allowing the moment to settle within her. This was not merely a discussion about vitamins or health. It was about personal transformation, the very essence of the journey she had embraced. Great question, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Embracing our struggles does not always mean a complete overhaul. It starts with small, incremental changes. It's about recognizing the complexities of our lives and making conscious choices that align with our evolving identities. Just as we would incorporate a new vitamin into our daily regimen, we can introduce new perspectives into our lives. A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the room, and she saw nods from the attendees. Joan felt a rush of adrenaline, a confirmation that her message was resonating. The truth was that her journey of grief, vulnerability, and growth had equipped her with insights that extended beyond nutrition. This was about creating a life that nourished not just the body, but the spirit. Transformation requires patience and resilience. It's weaving together the lessons learned from our struggles into the fabric of our everyday lives, she continued, her voice now confident and passionate. And know this, you are not alone on this path. We grow together. The applause that erupted felt like an embrace, a tangible validation of her journey from the pharmacy counter to this podium. In that moment, she understood that she was no longer just a pharmacist. She was a guide, a fellow traveler sharing the narrative of growth. As the seminar reached its conclusion, Joan invited the crowd to participate in a short reflection exercise. Think about one small change you can begin today, something that can lead you toward thriving rather than merely surviving. Write it down, share it with a partner, and make a commitment. Joan moved among the attendees, listening to their ideas and encouraging their voices, each exchange grounding her further in her new role. She found herself exhilarated by the connections still blossoming among laughter and shared stories. She was no longer a solitary figure holding all the knowledge. She had become part of a vibrant tapestry where every thread mattered. After the event, she donned a jacket against the evening chill, feeling proud of the fulfillment she had experienced. The journey was not without its challenges. However, it had transformed her. She looked at the reflections of those she had touched with her words and those who had shared their vulnerabilities. It was exhilarating to feel recognized, not just for her competence, but for her authenticity. Weeks passed, and the connections she had forged blossomed into a thriving community that met regularly, sharing their journeys of transformation. They discussed health, nutrition, and self-acceptance, building trust through their shared experiences. Joan had morphed from a local pharmacist into a beacon of resilience, a figure who reminded others of their power to change. Finally, one afternoon, Joan received an email from a health and wellness magazine, inviting her to write an article about her journey and the seminar series she had initiated. This recognition set off a fresh wave of pride within her. It was evidence of her evolution, tangible acknowledgement that people were eager to hear her story. This turning point encapsulated her journey. Joan Parker, once content behind the pharmacy counter, had now become an advocate for growth, embracing the complexities of life with confidence and authenticity. She had conquered the doubts that once held her back, replaced them with solid confidence, and established her place in a narrative that was still being written. Realizing her profound transformation, she smiled at her reflection in the window. She had found her voice, a voice that echoed with clarity and strength, rooted deeply in her own experiences and the lives she had touched. As you reflect on your own journey, remember that transformation begins with one step. You can cultivate your own narrative of change and resilience. You need to subscribe now to witness more stories of personal triumph. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Don't keep your reactions to yourself. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about this transformation. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to endure the beauty of overcoming struggles.